Hello and welcome. I am Mara Cepeda. This is Rappler Talk. We are here today with Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, the principal author of a recently approved Senate resolution recommending that President Rodrigo Duterte declares a state of national emergency due to the severe impact of the African swine fever in the Philippines. Hello, sir. Welcome to Rappler.
Hello, Mara, and to your viewers, magandang araw sa kanila lahat.
Okay, let's dive right into it. The Department of Agriculture has allotted about 2.6 billion pesos this year to help revive the ailing hog industry and at the same time quell the spread of ASF across the country. So essentially the strategy I believe is to give out loans for farmers and hog raisers. But the contention of a lot of senators, including yourself, is that this isn't enough. That's
Yes.
why you want a national health emergency to be declared. How so? And how dire is the situation really that you think it is very important for the president to put us through to declare a national health emergency?
Well, the hog industry has lost about almost 60 billion pesos worth of livestock in 2020. More than 4 million pigs have been culled because walang cure ang African swine fever, and the mortality is about 100%. In other words, when you get it, when the pig gets it, mamamatay siya. And therefore, immediate culling is the way to prevent it from spreading, number one, and number two, of course, ensuring that these infected pigs do not enter other farms and spread. So malaking pera ang nawala na, 60 billion. And the hog farmers, 70% of our backyard farms. So maliliit ang pinaka-apektado rito. As usual, pagka sa anumang kalamidad, ang pinaka-mahihirap, ang pinaka-matindi ang tama. Yung mga mayayaman, lugi, yes, but hindi sila gugutumin. And that's why the state of calamity is necessary, because the existing funds of the Department of Agriculture is really kulang na kulang. In fact, the 2.6 billion that they're supposed to spend this year for ASF evolved. We had 3 hearings beginning second week of February sa Agriculture Committee because of the resolution that we filed on food prices. And in these 3 hearings, the initial presentation was very interesting. They were allocating 28 billion pesos para sa ASF. Pero nung nag-breakdown, 27.5 billion was loans and 500 million was assistance and other expenses. So sabi namin, bakit ganun? Napakaliit. Tsaka pa, yung mga dapang-dapa ng mga hog raisers, pag umutang sila, gagawin nilang collateral yung kanilang farm. Kung lalong tumama ang African swine flu, di lalo pa silang nabaon. So it was, obviously glaringly lacking in terms of what we felt was a necessary response. And so from then on, we said, where do we get the funds? In fact, in the end, in the last hearing of the Agriculture Committee, which was second week of March, 8.6 billion na ang kanilang requirement for 2021. Hindi nga 2.6 8.6. And sabi namin, saan nyo kukunin yan? Kung 2.6 lang. 2.6 lang yung pondo nila. Pero 8.6 ang requirement nila.
Saan daw nila kukunin?
The state of calamity declaration will allow the national government to use the calamity funds, a national disaster response, 20 billion yan eh. So they can use a portion of that to address the African swine flu. Without a state of calamity declaration, hindi nila mapupondohan ng husto itong African swine fever epidemic.
The DAs are also wants the LGUs to tap into their own disaster and calamity funds. But the problem is, sir, since last year, a lot of these funds have already been depleted because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Another big crisis we have to deal
Yes,
with, a food security crisis. And
that's
that's why
right.
you have national government to come in. So, apart from funding from the national government, how else can the national government assist the hog raisers down to the barangay level?
They have several programs, biosafety controls, which requires border security. They do have, zero collateral loans for indemnification, pero kulang.
Hmm.
So really, may programa sila, pero hindi sapat ang pondo. And if you want to have an effective, response, you have to have the necessary resources. And we've done this before. In 1995, there was the foot and mouth disease. 27 provinces were affected. Billions was also worth of damages was also, incurred. So a state of emergency, a state of calamity, executive order was declared, funds were made available, and we were able to overcome that. In 2014, when I was presidential assistant on food security, we declared a state of calamity sa Cocolisap. Over 2 million trees were infected. Millions of coconut farmers were also affected. And so with that state of calamity declaration, we were able to, through an executive order, we were able to allocate almost ₱500 million worth of additional funds. And we used the funds to provide cash for work sa mga coconut farmers. Sila yung gagawa ng protocols for pest management. Binayaran natin sila. We mobilized the local governments also. They identified the areas within which were in the barangays which needed to be treated with the pest management protocols. And by the end of December, we were able to bring down from 57 hotspots. We were able to bring down the number of hotspots to 1. Again, a state of calamity declaration and additional funds and mobilization of the local governments. That's what we have to do with the African swine fever.
May nakuha na ba kayong update, sir, from Malacanang if the president will be declaring it soon? Any kind of concrete commitment like that?
Well, meron kaming mga naririnig na maari na kasi ire-recommenda na daw talaga ng Department of Agriculture. Because sila mismo humihingi ng dagdag na pondo. Saan nila kukunin kung walang state of calamity declaration? Supplemental budget? Ang tagal nun. Aabot pa ng debate sa Senado at sa Kongreso yun. We need to act immediately. So you need to fund biosafety measures and border security. You hire the hog raisers, yung mga magbababoy na tinamaan ito at kalahati na lang o 20% na lang ang kanilang baboy, malaki ang danyos. Hire them to do border patrol, border control para meron silang dagdag na kita and income to augment, di ba, yung panggastos nila sa araw-araw. Isa yan. Of course, yung indemnity. Bigyan ng direct cash indemnity ang mga nalugi. That will also, ang mga namatayan, that will also encourage the farmers, the backyard farmers to report. You know, if you don't report it, then the chances are pwede yung ipuslit. Kasi kahit namatay na yung baboy, the virus is still there and you can spread it. So you encourage them to cull and then to make sure that it's disposed properly because that should be part of the requirement of the indemnification.
Senator Kiko, your resolution actually opposes one of the DA's plans to triple the minimum access volume of pork imports with lower tariffs. But it seems this proposal will be pushing through. Can you explain to us why are you so opposed to this? What's the implication if I am a small hog raiser? And if it does push through, if President Duterte tells the DA, go ahead, go push through with this, what can hog raisers do to cope?
Okay.
Can they cope?
The problem is supply. So importation per se is, we're not against importation per se. We really have to provide, on the interim, at an interim basis, enough pork supply so that the prices stabilize. Ganyan talaga yan, law of supply and demand. Pagka kulang ang supply, tataas yung presyo, di ba? At umaabot na ng 400 piso mahigit. So, supply temporarily bring in pork from abroad. That's fine, temporarily, to address the lack of supply. But it has to be the right amount and not, too much to the point that the local hog industry, which is already facing so many challenges, dapa na, will compete pa with millions of kilos of imported pork. Mamatay talaga yung industriya. In the same way, sa bigas, di ba? Pag pinasok mo ng napakaraming imported, you directly compete with local rice farmers. And therefore, di ba, bakit ka bibili from rice farmers ng mataas kung makaka-import ka naman? Ganun din sa hog raisers. Bakit ka bibili ng baboy na mas mataas ang cost of production kung pwede ka namang mag-import? Di ba? So consumers will benefit, yes, in the short run, but food security will be undermined in the long run. Because again, we may be able to import now, but what if the time comes that the countries we are importing from refuse to export unless we pay the price that they dictate? Mahihirapan tayo dyan. So it has to be, to strike a balance. And our concern is, number one, they want to lower the tariffs to 5%, from 40 outside MAV and 30% tariff. Ang ibig sabihin yan, ibabagsak yung taripa na babayaran. And our computation is about, based on their at the minimum 11 billion pesos worth of tariffs will be lost. And these tariffs, when collected, is meant precisely to provide assistance and support for the industry. Kaya nga pinoprotektahan mo tinataas mo ng kaunti. 'Di ba? Yung bayad galing yung imported na babayad para na kahit paano merong buffer and merong cushion na panlaban yung mga local hog raisers. So and at 30% kumikita na sila. Malaki na ang kita ng importers. The landed cost of imported pork would be around sabi nila $2.5 to $3. That's 150 pesos. Ang minamarkup ng based on the data that was shown to us, ang markup is 40 pesos per kilo ng mga importer. And you're talking of 400 million kilos. 400 million kilos. You know how much 400 million kilos is if it's landed cost at $2 or $3? That's $1.2 billion worth of imports. We only import 20 billion to 25 to 30 during my time in the NFA. 25 to 30 billion pesos worth of rice. Now we're looking at 50 billion pesos worth of pork. Ang laking pera niyan. 'Di ba? 16, ang laking pera. Tapos papatungan. So who is pushing for lowering na nga the tariffs tapos increasing pa the volume? So somebody, is going to make a killing in terms of profits, 'di ba? At the expense of our local hog industry. And that's why we are concerned about this.
Senator, as a consumer, I can feel the effects of this kasi ang mahal bumili ng baboy ngayon sa grocery, sa market.
Yeah, sabi nga nila, dati pag ikaw ay kumain ng baboy, 'di ba? Magkaka-high blood ka. Ngayon tingnan mo lang yung presyo ng baboy, magkaka-high blood ka na. Tapos yung biro, broken-hearted na daw ang mga baboy ngayon.
Bakit, sir?
Ayaw na nilang magmahal Ayaw na. Broken-hearted na. No, but kidding aside, talaga, it's really, di ba, levity aside, you're right. It's painful to see meat pork at 500 pesos, close to 500 pesos a kilo.
Yes, sir. And they
So,
imposed a
and that's
price.
why we don't oppose importation, but we have to do it right.
Sir, they imposed the price ceiling, but some pork vendors actually had to close shop kasi mas malulugi pa daw sila kung i-impose nila yung...
Well, that's correct. But but more than close shop, but they're really selling it in the black market at higher prices. 'Di ba? That's the net effect of what kulang ang supply mo tapos nag-price ceiling ka, hindi nila ibebenta openly, pailalim. And then yan ang black market, 'di ba? So mahal pa rin. So supply has to be addressed. We agree that importation is a stopgap measure, but we have to do it right.
Okay.
We don't want anyone taking advantage of the supply problem to make a killing. Sabi nga nila, there are two types of human beings in the time of a calamity. Those who take advantage, yung mapagsamantala, and those who will provide help and assistance. So the best in the human being can come out of a calamity as well as the worst. And in this case, we feel there seems to be, and that's why we're going to have a committee of the whole hearing, on the tongpats of yung presyo ng 5 to 10 pesos daw ang per kilo para makakuha ka ng permit to import. So you can imagine how much 400 million kilos of tongpats. Ang laki na ang kikitain ng at therefore he can spread the largest around and give colluding Department of Agriculture officials or employees, tongpats, commission. And that's what we want to look into.
May schedule na, sir, for the Senate committee of the whole hearing for
Well, we're still on lockdown. And hopefully it should be before the Senate and Congress goes on recess, because when we go on recess, the Tariffs and Customs Code provides that the President, while the Senate is in Congress is in recess, can bring down tariff the tariffs, in case of precisely emergencies of this nature. So yun ang dapat before we go on recess.
The hearing will be before March 26, because that's the legislative calendar schedule for.
Yes. Or maybe right after, soon, immediately after. So yes, dapat sana para magkaroon ng dagdag na information ang Malacanang at to be guided by what we find out.
Senator Kiko, what grade would you give the DA in helping contain the ASF, the spread of the ASF these past 2 years? Because we're feeling the brunt of it now, but the problem actually started 2 years ago. And what grade, how do you assess the performance of the department in addressing this very huge problem?
Well, in fairness to Secretary Dar, he got appointed 2019 at the height of all of that, and then nag-COVID. So, he, what's the term? He was just getting his feet wet, adjusting to the bureaucracy's demands, and then tinamaan siya ng COVID. So and COVID really restricted everyone. Hindi makakilos, hindi makagawa ng, ng mga interventions as effectively as you'd like. So we're still giving him, well, I have not lost my, trust and confidence in Secretary Willie, but sabi ko nga, you cannot soar like an eagle if you're surrounded by turkeys. So I feel there are some around him, and he said as much. In one of the hearings, I think the first or second hearing in February of the Agriculture Committee, when asked about one individual who was appointed, uh, even if he had, a back track record of, being linked to smuggling, he said, di ba, that was the appointment by Malacanang.
Mhm.
Uh, which is to say, therefore, that, di ba, parang, what does that mean? There are forces around him that are, that he has to deal with. You know, I can understand where he's coming from. I've worked in the executive department.
Mhm.
I was precisely placed in 4 controversial agencies to help uh, put Humpty Dumpty together again. That was the Philippine Coconut Authority, the National Food Authority, the National Irrigation Administration, and the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority. And when I stepped in, it was, Cocolisap was raging. Uh, we didn't import enough rice. Supply was, inflation, rice inflation was 15%. In the NIA board, everybody was fighting. They were posting, what do you call it? They were paying paid ads, management and rank and file against one another. So it was like I was putting out all these fires. And so I can understand where Secretary Willie Dar is coming from in terms of people around him that may not be as cooperative or do not share, diba, his vision, and are in a way undermining his efforts. So I think what he needs is help at this point, and that's what we're doing precisely.
Is you painted a very bleak picture within the DA and the bigger battle that ESF that they have to deal with.
But there are solutions. There are solutions. For
Yeah.
example, when I was chair of the NFA Council, from June to December, I filed cases against traders who were in cahoots with NFA managers.
Mhm.
And I filed cases in Region 3, Region 4, Region 5, Region 6, Region 9, Caraga, and NCR. So in 7 or 6 regions, we filed cases to send a message to the bureaucracy that if you don't behave, I'll go after you.
And you think Secretary Dar should do the same?
Yeah, he should. He should put his foot down. And
Mhm.
I wish him well. I wish him luck. And if he needs my help in order to do that, we're more than willing to help him.
Okay. Now let's move into another topic. So we're dealing with the food security crisis amid the coronavirus pandemic that has really rearranged the way we live today. Do you share the sentiment of former DOH Secretary Esperanza Cabral that we're not just back to square one with 7,000 cases again, but actually we're 10 steps backward? Do you share that sentiment?
Well, obviously, you know, 1 year ago we had 1 death. We now have 12,000 plus deaths. 1 year ago, you had 90 persons under investigation showing symptoms. Now we have how many? Almost 500, over 500,000, almost 600,000. So, and 6 active cases. So, of course, their defense has always been, well, what about the other countries? They went through this, they went through that. Well, why compare ourselves with those who are fumbling? Why not compare ourselves with those who are not?
Mhm.
Taiwan only has 10 deaths,
Hmm.
900 plus cases. Diba? Vietnam, Thailand, have managed the spread of the disease. New Zealand has. So yeah, the ineptitude is really glaring, and we saw this from day one. In a February 4 hearing of the Committee on Health last year, 2020, I already said The response looks like it's a failure in leadership. Uh, and in April, the Senate, 15 senators, asked for his resignation.
Secretary Duque, you mean?
Yes, yes. And that's the difficulty with, how do you call it, condoning incompetence. And if you condone it, then it will repeat itself. Diba? Uulit-ulitin lang. And that's where we're at now.
No, just
and therefore, what is the solution? If sabi nga nila, insanity, Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Diba? Kumuha na lang tayo ng bato, pukpok natin sa ulo natin. So unless you change, diba, the leadership, and the DOH is front and center here, we're going to have more of the same. We're going to move from lockdown to lockdown. And of course, but moving forward, we will have to push for more contact tracing, more testing, more isolation. The World Health Organization has said that in Metro Manila, only 4 local governments are actually doing accurate or appropriate contact tracing. 4 of 17, diba? And so that has to be addressed. And apart from that, of course, is the massive vaccine rollout. It has to be. We have to speed it up and make sure that we are able to vaccinate as many. You succeed in both, and then we will have, how do you call it, moved away from the current situation we're in and move towards normalcy.
okay. Now, there's a renewed call by the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry to sana allow the private companies to directly import COVID-19 vaccines. Do you think that the government should allow the private sector to do that? Because they're scrambling to secure vaccines for the rest of us.
Yes, I think if that is one other approach to the incompetence is to let those who can do it do it. Diba? And that's the private sector and the local governments. And that's the principle precisely behind our corona, the vaccine rollout measure that we was certified as urgent, and we were able to pass this first quarter, allowing private sector and allowing LGUs. We recognize precisely, the biggest vaccination rollout of the Department of Health involved around 6 million. 6 million people. I think it's the measles vaccination. We're talking about 10 times more. So I don't see how the DOH by its lonesome, unless precisely you augment, the multiplier, the force multiplier, for lack of a better term, by involving, and deputizing your local governments, involving and deputizing the private sector to do the job. Precisely, the 4,100 vaccination centers that they said they would set up, that's both government and private sector. So allow them to, monitor them, provide them the necessary, put in place rather the necessary monitoring and reporting requirement for the private sector, but give them the power, enable them, keeping it with the bureaucracy that obviously has failed. For example, yung testing. Nung una, RITM lang ang pwede mag-test eh. Gobyerno. So they had to open it up and allow for private sector laboratories to be set up. Una, ayaw nila i-set up yung mga laboratory. Ang kupad-kupad. And then eventually, we had to push them to deliver in terms of creating more laboratories. Remember the issue between Marikina and the testing lab in Marikina? They wanted to open it. The DOH refused and saying they were still testing it. And Mayor Marcy threatened to open it and tell them, you bring me to jail if you want to. And then when they finally inspected it, it was really just an issue of inspection. Okay naman. So, and the same with testing kits. And why was the locally made testing kit not approved immediately? It took some time. We had to speak up and say what's taking it so long. And finally, when we, the minority in the Senate, said, why is it not being utilized and rolled out on a Saturday? On a Sunday, they said, pwede na. And on Monday, when we checked the prices of testing, di ba, bumagsak ng 26% the following week. Yung presyo ng testing kits kasi mas mura yung locally produced testing kits. So,
the current policy now is pwede na umorder, pwede mag-secure ng contracts for supplies ang LGUs and the private sector, but it has to be through a tripartite deal. So I think the appeal really is tanggalin na yung national government factor. But some of the contention of health experts is if you do that, you'd allow private companies and LGUs to deal directly with the vaccine manufacturers. Magkakaroon naman ng inequitable rollout of the vaccine. So yung mas mayayamang LGUs and yung companies na mas maraming pera, sila yung and more connection.
And that's why when we approved it, we approved a tripartite so that there is still monitoring. In the end, you can't hope to do everything. Diba? But precisely empower them and then regulate them.
Okay.
So focus on being, quick on your feet in regulation and, diba? And ensure, strict monitoring, strict reporting while they do what they're doing. Kasi nga, yung inequity, that could happen. But if you have strict monitoring, diba, and you can at any time revoke your deputization, diba, you use that. But don't prevent. Don't be inclusive. Diba? Enable. Diba? Enable them. Don't prevent them and stifle. This is a whole of nation approach. And therefore, I feel you need to infuse the bureaucracy precisely with private sector dynamism, local government impatience, so that it will, move forward, and so that things happen. You need ground troops to address 70 million. Sabi nila, without ground troops, you cannot win any war. Diba? And who are your ground troops? The private sector, the local governments. Enable them, empower them, and then you strictly monitor them and ensure that they follow, diba, your guidelines.
So you disagree with this circulating DOH administrative order that draft pa lang naman siya, sir, that supposedly proposes to exempt certain industries or certain companies dealing with alcohol, tobacco products, milk products from buying the COVID-19 vaccines for their own people.
What's the science behind that in terms of ensuring that we are able to reach herd immunity? What's the science behind that? Again, it's a bureaucracy jealous of its powers, diba? And doing overreach. And yes, it's against, I agree with some of the senators who said this is against the law. The law that we passed, because the law does not distinguish between who should or shouldn't get it. It just says private sector can enter into a tripartite agreement with the DOH. So it's incredible. Diba? Ano ito? Pag ikaw nasa Tanduay, kumpanya ng Tanduay, hindi ka pwedeng bumili ng vaccine para sa mga empleyado mo. Bakit? Diba? Tao din yun eh.
Exactly.
Diba? pag hindi sila na-vaccinate, ikakalat din nila yung virus eh. Di ba? Anong kalokohan, di ba? It's unfortunate. And sabi draft naman, pero the fact that something like that can come out of the bureaucracy really gives you, a sense of do they know what they're doing?
Senator Kiko, moving on to a little bit of political matters. The Liberal Party is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year, and you actually held an parang online celebration of sorts because syempre it's the new normal, so as to spread the virus. And you said in your speech then that you are actually aiming to recruit 75,000 new members by 2022, and you're taking pride na you're aiming not to recruit politicians. You want to recruit Filipinos, ordinary Filipinos. Where is the party now in your efforts to rebrand LP really as a true party of the people?
Well, I wouldn't say rebrand. I'd like to say redefine. It's really not just a matter of branding, but redefining, the party after its defeat in 2016, and of course after 2019. But we continue to go back to the grassroots. Ako naniniwala pa rin. Of course, it's been more of a challenge now because of fake news and a lot of demonization being funded. But I still believe that our citizens are capable of making an informed decision, provided the information is made available to them. And I also believe that there is no political force on earth, more powerful than citizens in their vast numbers, mobilized, organized, and committed to achieve a specific goal or specific set of goals, together with committed leaders. So, and because of that, since 2016, we have been focusing on bringing in new blood, ordinary folks. And you'll be surprised, in 2020, we started the year with 33 chapters. By the end of 2020, we now have around 107 chapters. So over 200% increase in our chapters. So digital technology also has its upside, because you can reach everybody. Well, not everybody, but you can reach a significant, number of individuals when you go online, and you can reach them far and wide. You have scale, you have scope, di ba? And also speed, kasi hindi ka na kailangan pumunta doon.
Zoom ka lang ngayon.
So that's the upside, and we're taking advantage of that. So we are preparing for 2022. We have been preparing since, and that's what a political party should be doing.
Yes.
Going back to the citizens. In 2019, we precisely did that listening campaign. And we've drawn a lot of lessons from that. We've drawn a lot of sentiment. A lot of lessons from public sentiments. And we continue to do that. This time we have online polling, our own in-house. We continue to listen. We continue to evaluate, the lay of the land in terms of public sentiment. So, yeah, tuloy lang. Yun nga yung aming theme sa 2020, nung February 2021, January, when, we celebrated our 75th year. Tuloy lang. We just keep at it.
Senator Kiko, you mentioned your listening campaign that's called Project Makinig, and you mentioned you learned very important lessons from that campaign. What are these important lessons, and how are you going to apply this in 2022? Not just within the party, but of course, syempre, with how LP will be running its campaign when the time comes.
Yeah. First, when you do conversations outside of social media, you find out first it's not as toxic There is, in fact, it's not toxic at all when you do these conversations. So we have to have precisely safe spaces uh, in which dialogue and conversation can take place.
Mhm.
And I don't think social media would be the best uh, platform to do that. So that's one. Two, uh, that people just want people just want their day-to-day challenges to be, to be the focus and attention of their leaders. Food, housing, jobs, uh, and they tune out when there is too much toxicity.
Mhm.
That people are just trying to survive, and they don't have any energy left for anything else. More so, toxic political, di ba? Uh, so much animosity. They tune out.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that is, I think, one of, and of course, the people, when you talk to them and face to face, that they lalo na Filipinos, di ba? They're very welcoming. We were able to uh, converse with 114,000 households throughout the country,
Mhm.
in 100 plus districts.
Mhm.
So Filipinos are very welcoming, you
Mhm.
know. Uh, and it helped us a lot because we were able to mobilize them, and sabi nga nila, it may have been too late for the 2019 elections, but it's about the right time for 2022. So it's a continuing process of reaching out to the voters, and helping strengthen the party by precisely drawing strength from one another, drawing strength from our ordinary folk, our citizens.
Senator Kiko, do you feel as if the Liberal Party has done enough so far reaching out to that sector of society that, for the past years has been very hostile towards LP and your supporters and have, vilified the Dilawan tag and made it as if, you're the bad guys. Do you think this listening campaign helped, address that problem, that communication problem, so that we'll be able to come through to this sector of society and probably find common ground?
Well, I think we've made major headway. The fact that we now have 107 chapters nationwide, you know, means that, you do have support. When the 2016 elections, there has to be we have to correct the misimpression that we were, horribly defeated in the polls in 2016. That's not true. We lost the presidency, but we won the vice presidency.
Hmm.
And of the 12 candidates of LP, 7 won. Di ba? Uh, this is different from the 2010 election. Yeah, wherein the wherein the administration could not even come up
Hmm.
with the Senate slate because there were, di ba? And lost terribly, di ba? So that's one. And that's why ako, totoo, there is a lot of toxicity on social media platforms. But a lot of that precisely is orchestrated.
Hmm.
In 2019, the College of Mass Communication of UP came up with a research paper on the trolling and fake news. And they said the most trolled were Bam Aquino and Mar Rojas in the 2019 elections. And I saw Bam 1 month after the elections. And he told me that kami ang pinaka-trolled, number one. Pero ngayon, zero trolls. He still posts, pero hindi na siya tinotroll.
Hmm.
So clearly, you have this orchestrated, inauthentic demonization taking place. It's effective up to a certain extent precisely because marami ang napapaniwala,
Hmm. Hmm.
'di ba? Doon sa mga kasinungalingan at orchestrated na paninira.
Hmm.
And that's a challenge to us.
Hmm.
How do we address that? How do we counter that, di
Mhm.
ba? And so, how do we counter that? By going back to the people and talking to them, reaching out to them, organizing them, which is what we've been doing. How we wish we could do more, no? But obviously, it really is the orchestrated, inauthentic bashing, trolling, and the spreading of false news and black propaganda, that manipulates or misleads the voters
Mhm.
and their sentiments.
Senator Kiko, winding down to my last few questions for today. In the third week of March, recently lang, there is an effort called the Isang Bayan Coalition, and their goal really is to unite all the different voices of the opposition from LP to the left, the middle, the left, the right,
Yeah.
and to field a single presidential, vice presidential, and senatorial slate in 2022. Is the Liberal Party part of this effort, and in what capacity, if
Yeah.
so?
Well, first, just to backtrack a bit, no.
Mm.
I think part of precisely going back to the people, which we've been doing since 2016, is to address also challenges that our people are facing. And the Liberal Party has been involved precisely in addressing the challenges of the pandemic.
Mhm, mhm,
And the three typhoons, for example, that hit Luzon, one after the other in the last quarter of the year last year. So up until today, we continue to provide relief assistance. We continue to provide assistance for those who need digital technology, equipment, kasi nga, online schooling, etc. We are raising resources pa rin to help those in need because there are millions who are hungry now. So that has been what we've been doing since the start of the pandemic last year. And of course, the main inspiration is that we from the party get is the vice president, who has been tirelessly addressing the challenges of COVID and the challenge. When I was there, second week of March.
Yes, I saw the photo. You posted it.
Yeah,
Mhm,
the whole office of the vice president is one big bodega of relief goods and relief assistance for our what do you call it, for our people, for our citizens, and they continue to provide PPEs. They continue to provide support, and that's what we should be doing
mhm,
now. With respect to one sambayan, isang bayan, sorry. We have had informal talks with them. But yun na nga, I feel, and then yeah, the informal talks should continue. But I think the formalization of all of this should happen maybe uh, towards the filing, which is in October. So maybe August, September, the official formalization and discussions uh, should take place. But right now, efforts at unity, we welcome.
mhm,
We welcome that efforts to bring in together like-minded individuals with a common objective, and we wish them well. We are in discussions with them informally, and we hope they will succeed.
mhm, mhm,
And we are part of the process. Uh, but at this point, precisely, we are still focused, really, and we should be focused on the swine fever, African swine fever, the challenges of reviving the economy, the stimulus packages, the performance in the vaccine rollout, uh, because that's what our people need and
mhm.
are asking for.
Senator Kiko, this isn't the first time that for opposition figures to try to attempt to come together in preparation for national elections. What kind of concessions is the Liberal Party willing to make in terms of joining forces with groups or individuals that do not necessarily share the party's philosophies or ideologies? How do you find common ground with them? Because it's so easy to say, oh, we're going to unite the opposition, but it's very difficult. Kasi you're talking about deep-seated issues from with, ngayon pa lang sir, nag-aawayan na yung mga supporters niyo online. So how do you convince people to come together?
Well, that will be a function of leadership. So we will just have to, help in the process of uniting.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to the formal talks. But at this point, our focus really is on the pandemic and how we
During
can respond.
this administration, Senator Kiko, there's this long criticism that's thrown at the party that you're supposedly perpetuating, elitist politics. Do you feel that this criticism is unfair? Because again, when Isambayan coalition was launched, that criticism is once again being hurled, not just at the Isambayan coalition, but also to the different groups that they believe will be coming into it, like the Liberal Party.
Who's saying that? Is it the troll influenced comments? Because they will always have, something to say against those who do not agree with them. So that's par for the course. But I think in the end, we should all be judged by what we are doing, by the actions and our track records. So we will see. We will see how things pan out.
Okay. Now, Senator Kiko, is the Liberal Party going to take a stand with Isambayan, for example, that should VP Leni Robredo really push through with a presidential run, that she should be endorsed by the coalition? Or are you open to, the possibility that Isambayan will not endorse whoever will be Liberal Party standard bearer?
Again, we haven't discussed this officially and formally, so I cannot really comment. And I'd rather not. Let's wait for the time. There's a right time to discuss this. And personally, and I think the Vice President shares my view that informal discussions are okay. We should be able to do that, but the formal discussions should happen later on. Let's focus on the pandemic response and how can we improve on it.
Okay. Senator Kiko, for my final question for today, what's your plan for 2022? Are you going to go for a higher post next year?
Well, sabi ko nga, ang kulang sa supply baboy, ang kulang yung bakuna, ang oversupply yung mga nag-aambisyong politiko. Yun, meron talagang oversupply nun. Overly ambitious politicians who want to aspire for higher office. Wag na nating dagdagan. So re-election is my option. I still have one more term. So doon na lang tayo. Because I feel the challenges in the agriculture sector continues to be great. And I'd like to champion the cause of our farmers and our fisher folk, because that's really, in the end, we can champion so many causes, but food is a basic fundamental gut issue, and poverty and hunger. So I'd like to champion agriculture, and that's why maybe precisely the plan, re-election. Sila na lang. Marami, sobra-sobra na ang ambisyosong politiko. Wag na nating dagdagan.
So good luck with that, Senator Kiko. And I believe naman, sir, you're very passionate about, agriculture, and we can expect that, you would be advocating for that in the Senate. And that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much, Senator Kiko, for joining us.
Thank you, Mara. Maraming salamat. At uulitin ko, sabi nga wag na nating payagan na dapat nagmamahalan tayo, pero dapat yung mga presyo ng bilihin hindi nagmamahalan. Yun ang kailangan natin ayusin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Kiko. Once again, this was Rappler Talk. I am Mara Cepeda. Join us again next time.